trouble in like moving to present mode. So if you have trouble reading the text, we'll try to figure that out as we go along. But welcome everybody. My name is Mary Gladstone Highland. I'm here with Sonia Luna. We are both with the Union of Concerned Scientists. We are the Michigan Outreach Consultants, and we're here tonight to talk to you about civics and how we are working together to build a healthier democracy. So tonight we're going to talk about what is the Union of Concerned Scientists. We're going to talk about how we engage in Michigan. We're going to briefly talk about voting rights and how voting rights issues are specifically related to Michiganders, and then how you can get engaged. But I wanted to start us off, and I'm going to stop my share for a minute here, actually. I wanted to start us off by going around, since we have a small enough group, and asking you all to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about why you came tonight. And we'll keep it brief because we only have an hour together, but I'd love to hear from you all. That's one of the best parts of these sorts of engagements. We can actually hear from each other. And I apologize if you're also hearing from my daughter screaming. But I'll go ahead and pass it over to Sonia first, and then we'll go around. Maybe we'll do this by mutual invitation. So Sonia, you ask somebody, and then we'll follow after that.
Sure. My name is Sonia Luna, and I started working with the Union of Concerned Scientists about October last year. And so I'm learning about what they do here in Michigan, and how they support the work in Michigan, and how we can support the work in Michigan. I am based out of Ypsilanti, Michigan. So right now it's snowing, so that's fun. But Michael Livingston. Do you want to go next? If you want to.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Livingston. I'm a journalism and international relations major here at CMU. My main interest when it comes to civic engagement is how the media plays into it. If we touch on that tonight, that'd be really cool. If not, that's fine. But I just kind of came to learn how I can get more engaged in local government and how media relates to that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to invite somebody then, Michael?
Sure. Michaela.
Okay. She says she's currently working. She can't turn on the computer or unmute.
Okay.
Why don't we go with Caitlin, since you're on screen? You want to introduce yourself, Caitlin?
Yes, absolutely. My name is Kate. The pronouns used are she, her, and hers. Maddie invited me today. I am recently elected student body president, so I love hearing more ways about sustainability. And in student government, I've been representing the environmental org. So I'm happy to always hear more and kind of just learn more and get out there a little more. And I will invite the birthday boy to speak. So Max.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Max, he, him, his. So I'm the current president of the Sierra Club on campus. Just absolutely love the environment, and I'll support that as best we can. So that's the ball over. Oh, also second year student majoring in political science and international relations. Forgot that. Okay, I'll toss it over to Eric.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Urbaniak, and I'm a second-year student majoring in biology and public and nonprofit administration. I guess I'm very interested in civic engagement just to see how I can get involved. I've never really been part of like a legislation writing process or, done really much beyond just voting, so I would love to learn more. Thank you for having me. And I will call on Gabriel.
Hi, I'm Gabriel Andren. The pronouns I use are he, him, and his, and I'm a first-year journalism student here at Central. And I'm really just interested in learning more about the sustainability of campus and how I can become more involved in that process, trying to improve that. Yeah, and I guess I will call on Kendall.
Hi, I'm Kendall Halleck. I'm a freshman. I'm a double major in computer science and information technology. and I love caring about the environment, climate change. I'm very passionate about those things, and I saw this on Engage, and I was like kind of interested. I want to know like how I can get involved in like legislation and stuff like that when it comes to sustainability. And I'll call on Samantha.
Hello, my name is Samantha Vandemark. I'm a freshman here at Central. I'm double majoring in accounting and finance. And I came across this on Engage just like Kendall did. We're actually roommates, and so we're right next to each other. But we thought it was a cool thing to check out and see what we can find out. I'll call on Teresa.
Hi, I am a journalism and environmental studies major. I'm very interested in sustainability and that sort of work. I'm more focused on it from the community lens at the moment, but I would like to understand more how to interact and engage with sustainability work in a legislative, more policy oriented setting. And I guess I'll call on Alexa, who I think that's the last person we have right now, right?
Okay. Hello. I am a junior majoring in neuroscience and psychology. Actually, yesterday, I think it was Maddie and I were talking. Maddie is one of my roommates, as is Teresa. And I was talking about how I find it hard to know how to be civically engaged, kind of like what Eric said, other than voting. You know, and so she told me about this, and I thought it'd be really cool to learn.
Thank you, everybody, for doing that. I always appreciate hearing from who else is in the room. It helps to kind of ground the webinar, I think, and make it less about us being talking heads and more about engagement. So I really appreciate that. And I'm excited to hear about all of your interests. They very closely align with the work of UCS, so that's good, right? It's not like you all are here for the wrong reasons. So the work of UCS, and Sonia, I'm getting a little bit of a delay. Can you mute for right now?
Yes.
Thank you. The work of UCS, they use science to solve the planet's most pressing problems, which is sort of big in nature, but also really exciting. For me, when I started working for the Union of Concerned Scientists about a little bit over a year ago, it was actually right before the pandemic hit. It felt like an opportunity for me personally to get engaged in this type of work in a way that felt meaningful. I actually went to Western, and I graduated with a certificate in nonprofit administration also. And so I was really looking for a way that I could get involved in more of a civic lens. And the Union of Concerned Scientists has been a great fit for that. We have a number of different programs. It's a national organization. We have the Center for Science and Democracy, which looks at voting rights, and we're going to be talking a lot about that today. We have the Program for Global Security. We have climate and energy, clean transportation, and sustainable agriculture. And I would say that a lot of the constituents and advocates that we talk to are very interested in either climate and energy or in Center for Science and Democracy work, but there's a lot of ways that those programs intersect, and we're going to talk about some of those ways here tonight. In Michigan, we have all of the programs running active campaigns except for sustainable agriculture right now. And that doesn't mean that we won't have campaigns running for sustainable agriculture in the future, but that's what it is at the moment. And then Sonia and I wanted to walk you through some of the work that we've personally been engaged with UCS on the grounds here in Michigan. So I'll mute myself, Sonia, so you can take it away.
Okay, thanks. Yes, as part of the work around the election, we wanted to get out the vote, people to get out the vote, and I'm glad to hear that some of you voted. And we also wanted to create a voter's guide to kind of dispel voting. So we partnered with community organizations, Michigan United and Justice for Our Neighbors Michigan, to create this voter's guide. And it was for first-time voters, especially. We were thinking about like students like you guys, naturalized citizens. And we made the guide in English and Spanish. And so people that might have voted for the first time, right? So we were thinking about the different populations, communities that might need this information. The guide included information about like who is eligible to vote in Michigan, polling locations, where your polling location, how to find your polling location, and how to register to vote. And what if you've had an address change, maybe since you registered to vote and you've had to move around. So what do you do then? And then what are the procedures for voting in person? And then new to this year, right? We were allowed to, like, everyone was allowed to vote mail-in vote. So like, what was that process as well? So that was all included in the voting guide. Is also included information about COVID precautions that were at the polls and opportunities to work at poll work as poll workers. So we thought that students, especially like students, might be interested in working at the polls. So we had that information in the guide as well. And then in addition to that, we also had some social media posts that people could take and post on. And so you mentioned communications. That's one way to get involved is by posting on social media, these different information. And you see one of the ones on the slides is like important information, important dates, right? So we had that as a social media post, and you could post it on Facebook or Instagram or other things to help get out the information around voting. The other thing that we did, and you can, if you want to add anything to the chat that might be helpful for a voter's guide in the future, let us know as students that we might have missed. That would be helpful too, to know anything that would be helpful to help get out the vote. And then after the election, or actually kind of like 6 weeks, no, 4 to 6 weeks before the election, and then after, then the day of the election, we also wanted to collect data. So we want, especially around the mail-in votes and registration, so to also like dispel any misinformation after the election, right? And make sure all the votes were counted. And we wanted to make sure the validity of the election were results. So we started to call about 6 they prioritized some counties in Michigan, including like Wayne, Macomb, and Kent, and 3 other ones, Genesee. We started to call those departments of election and get the information, ask for the information. So we collected that data. And actually, that information is public information, so you can call and ask for that information, and it should be released to the public if they have it. So we tracked that information as the election went on, and then it got closer to the election. And we did find out that there was an increase this year in mail-in votes, and it was probably, again, contributed part to the pandemic, but also the ability for people to mail in their ballots without needing a reason to do so. Before, you needed to have a reason to do so. So now that process we found out that the process is good and it works well in Michigan. So hopefully that process continues as well. So that was with the voting information.
Yeah, when we started to do that work right after the election, the voting protection data collection work, the work group that we were on was called the Constitutional Crisis Task Force, which once again is another example of how sometimes these issues can seem very, very big, but in a sense, it was, collecting data, publicly available data, and helping to inform systems going forward. Other work that we're actively engaged in right now through our climate and energy program is trying to help activists be engaged in the Consumers Energy IRP process, which is their integrated resource plan process. Consumers Energy and all of the major energy suppliers have to provide a report on how they're going to operate moving forward. And then we as the public get to make statements and comments on whether or not we think that they're putting in place policies that will be equitable for the planet and not. And so if you're interested in learning about that Consumers Energy resource process, we can get you more information after this webinar, but we're having another webinar next week on the 27th where we're going to learn a lot more about how activists can engage in that process. And additionally, our global security program worked trying to get our legislators to sign on to a no first use policy. So that we can set that standard moving forward as a state and as our state legislators. And Okay. So we have a video here. We've got 2 short videos, and we're going to do some discussion questions in between them and some feedback time. But before I play this, when we were starting up today, we talked about how to get the video sound to play right, and I've got the screen share open. So what was the button that I'm looking for?
Teresa, I think you were the one that's what the button.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a little option. It says, it automatically says optimized for text and images when you share content, but then you just use the drop down arrow and you switch it to optimize for motion and video. Do you see that?
Not currently.
So click share at the bottom, and then all the little squares pop up. But now there should be in that little box, there should be an option to switch to motion and video.
Okay. Not currently seeing that one, so we're just going to see how it works. And if we don't get the audio, then we'll figure it out from there. Okay?
In a healthy democracy,
can you hear that? Good.
Our votes are supposed to guide social change. When votes have equal weight, our collective voice holds policymakers accountable. In this 3-part series, we're going to talk about the health of our democracy and the steps we can take to improve voter eligibility, protect equal access to the ballot, and ensure that our votes have equal value. We've seen that an unhealthy democracy contributes to unhealthy communities. The coronavirus pandemic has exacerbated the barriers to voting and election participation that already exist and is having an impact on the 2020 election. Communities where the barriers to voting are high and where votes are diluted through gerrymandering also face more pollution and environmental threats, have less access to health services, and risk lower life expectancy. But there is some good news. We can do something about these issues now, in this election. Regardless of where you live, you can urge candidates to support electoral reforms based on science, help boost voter turnout in our most impacted communities, and reaffirm the role of science in policymaking, including elections where everyone's vote counts. Scientists, public health experts, voting rights advocates, and environmental justice communities are coming together to reform our electoral process and renew our commitment to democracy. Because together we can help build a healthier democracy, one that represents the people and allows science to better serve the public. And to learn more about UCS's efforts to promote safe voting recommendations and how to get involved, visit act.ucsusa.org/build-healthier-democracy.
So obviously that video was from before the election, but the reason why I like it is because it makes that tie-in to why voting rights do intersect with environmental justice so closely. And so the first breakout room that we're going to do, and I'll let Sonia set it up, Maddie, and then we'll have you put us into breakout rooms if that works. And we're going to give us, I'm thinking about 7 minutes. I didn't want to stick with 5 or 10. So I'm going to give us 7 minutes for this discussion time.
Yeah, like Mary said, we just want to discuss the intersection of voting rights and environmental justice. Like the video mentioned, an unhealthy democracy leads to unhealthy communities. So how have you seen that play out in Michigan or witnessed that in your communities? So discuss those things, that intersection. So again, we have 7 minutes, breakout rooms, and we'll come back and share a little bit. Report back. One minute. Okay, join now.
I think there might have only been one room.
I put everyone in the same room.
Okay. I was like, we're all in the same room.
Okay. End all breakout sessions. Okay, I think if you all click leave. Oh boy. Okay. Okay. Let's try it again. Okay. Now it's telling me why? Hold on one second. It's saying that everyone needs to end all breakout sessions. I'm sorry. Breakout sessions. Okay, here we go.
Looks like it's able to now. Yeah. Thank you, Maddie.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So there should be 4 breakout rooms now. Okay. Do you guys get, okay. Teresa. Okay, I don't know what is, because it's not allowing me to like, okay, so can you guys see the show other breakout sessions? Like, does it show you the other rooms?
No, and you know what? It's fine. We can just discuss it here together if it's
Okay,
not.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
No, it's no worries. Thank you so much for trying. I feel like if there's not some kind of technical difficulty during a meeting or a webinar, then it didn't really happen, right?
Exactly.
So I'll just pose that question to the group. Are there ways that you have seen how this intersection is at play in your own communities? How when access to voting rights increases environmental injustices in your communities?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. We were asking about how when people in our community have less access to vote, it increases the amount of environmental injustices that happen in that particular community. So we're wondering if any of you have ideas or examples of that in play. So when communities have less access to the vote, they also have higher health disparities and higher environmental injustices happening in their communities.
Yeah, I think the perfect example of that was the Flint water crisis, because they had the emergency financial manager in charge who made the decision to switch to the Flint water in the first place, and on multiple occasions overturned votes to switch back to the Detroit water and mismanaged, and the Flint citizens weren't able to really, their elected officials weren't really allowed to have a say in it, because actually they voted to switch back to the Detroit water, but the manager overturned it. So basically all the effects of Flint were a result of that.
It's a really great example. And actually, Michigan has a lot of instances of water injustices happening. We have the health and safety of our Great Lakes, which we're so, aware of mostly, but also the Flint water crisis and water shutoffs in Detroit. And so it's interesting how water has been at play in a number of policy injustices here in the state. Thank you for that. Does anybody else have an example?
I can also add example. I worked for I worked in for the state representative in the UP for a while, and one of the biggest things we saw was that during the Enbridge Line 5 crisis, there wasn't enough alternative energy forms to supply the people in those areas with, energy and the ability to like keep things running. And so it was this constant we don't want, a pipeline through the Mackinac Straits, but at the same time, it's like these people don't have another option, at least during that time. So that was something where I see there's like this injustice happening, but at the same time, it's like there's all this politics at play, and it's like how do you remedy that issue?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you feel like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? Between how do you support your community, but also ensure that we're putting in place policies and structures that are good for the planet. And, we've done some work on coordinating with community partners around Line 5. There's an organization up in the, not in the UP, but in the top of the Lower Peninsula, maybe in the UP also, but they're based out of Traverse City, called For the Love of Water. And so been a part of a couple of their webinars and really devastating Line 5. And so a real rock and a hard place. Yeah. Thank you for that perspective. Anybody else want to share?
Hi. So I know something else is like access to green spaces and like in whiter communities they have like 2 times the space of like poor communities, and like the CDC recommends you relax during this pandemic and like go outside, but like people in poor communities don't have as much access to get outside and relax as like whiter communities. And I think that's like a voting thing because like these poorer communities like have less opportunities to vote and less opportunities to get funding, like federal funding, not just in their community.
To kind of add to that, food deserts. I mean, I guess there's lots of different examples, specific ones, of course, especially pertaining to environmental justice. But all of them kind of share this, as far as like voter suppression and being able to be civically involved, all of them share this lack of agency where communities aren't represented. Technically, they're stakeholders, but they're not involved or they're not included in decision-making processes. And so that's kind of where I see the connection between environmental justice and civic engagement, is that communities are left without any in to the decision-making process, and they're not able to actively participate in how plans are made.
Yeah, these are all really great examples. I mean, I know at one time, I'm not sure if this is still the case, but that there was no grocery store in the city of Flint. There were, convenience stores and the like, but no grocery store in the city of Flint. And when we're talking about people who have transportation issues to begin with, then that leads to a lower quality of life if you can only buy processed foods or canned foods and the like.
Same, I think, in the city of Detroit proper, before Whole Foods and now Myers, but there wasn't that many grocery stores either in the city itself. Yeah.
And even when we're thinking about grocery stores like Whole Foods and
Right.
the Myers, I mean, the Meijer is on 8 Mile basically in Ferndale. And so it's not in the heart of the city to begin with. And then Whole Foods is kind of priced out for people who would mostly be living in the surrounding area. Are there other examples? Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, I thought somebody.
No, it was just me. All right. So I'm going to share my screen again and we're going to move forward then. I appreciate all of your interacting with this discussion question because I think it's really helpful to hear from you all about where you're seeing it at play in your own communities. This is another example that Sonia and I thought of when we were thinking about this intersection of environmental justice and voting rights. The area code 48217, you might recognize it by that refinery that has the basketball painted on the refinery itself, the Marathon Refinery, is one of the most polluted zip codes in the entire United States, and I think it's definitely the most polluted zip code in Michigan. There's some really great articles that have been written on it. One of them that I pulled this information from was from the Detroit Metro Times, entitled Struggling to Breathe in 48217, Michigan's Most Toxic Zip Code. And I'm just going to read this out because I think that this was really meaningful, but that the health impact from the air pollution in Detroit is substantial. And the researchers wrote in the report titled Working Together to Improve Detroit's Air, adding that the impacts of poor air quality disproportionately fell on poor and minority populations. And if we know that these are individuals who are also being turned away from the polls or discouraged from voting or made so that it's even more hard to vote, that we can see how this is very much at play, specifically in this zip code. And I encourage you to look this article up, because it was long and it has a lot of really good information in there. So I'm going to mute myself because my daughter is crying, and I'm going to play this next video. We're only going to show you 2 of the 3, but this next one talks about gerrymandering, which is going to be how we're going to take the discussion moving forward.
Okay, now we can't hear it.
Yeah, the sound is...
My thing wasn't muted last time. I'll start it over again.
With the clock ticking down to the 2020 election, we need urgent and immediate action to ensure voters can vote safely and securely during the COVID-19 pandemic. In this final video of our 3-part series, we're going to discuss how redistricting impacts the way people are represented in our democracy, and how you can help ensure that all votes have equal value during and after this election. Gerrymandering, or the manipulation of political districts for partisan advantage, is used as a weapon to undermine the political power of communities of color. This practice, used by both parties, threatens a fair and representative democracy. Voters should be choosing their representatives, not the other way around. In order to protect the rights of voters, Congress is working to pass legislation like the For the People Act and other voting rights bills. This legislation will increase transparency and oversight in our elections and put a cap on gerrymandering by requiring independent redistricting commissions. Together, we can elect representatives who will fight for our needs and support science and evidence-based reforms. In addition to voting, whether by mail, early in person, or by ballot drop box, there are many ways you can act before and on Election Day. You can help other people register to vote and contact your local election officials to demand safe voting protocols. You can also volunteer to staff polling places, help count ballots, or be a poll monitor. Counting down to Election Day, you can decide not only to show up to vote, but also fight for others who have been disenfranchised by practices like gerrymandering. And after Election Day, we need to continue the fight for fair representation. To learn more about our efforts, actions you can take to get involved, and safe voting practices during COVID-19, visit us at act.ucsusa.org/science for healthy democracy.
So once again, that video was primarily made for before the election, but it points out the work that we have to do right now, which is focusing on fixing our gerrymandered system. And so we have a second question here, and we wanted to talk about and post this to you all about how gerrymandering impacts our communities.
And I have the definition again. It's gerrymandering is manipulation of political districts for a partisan advantage.
I can start off the discussion since this is my my whole job is educating about this stuff. But when I was watching the video and like when the question was posed, I was just thinking back to a discussion I'm having in another one of my classes. It's a cultural anthropology class, and we're talking about environmental justice. And one of my classmates brought up the point that, you know, one of the main problems why we aren't seeing environmental justice being carried out in communities is because the people that are most affected don't have the political power that they should be having. And I think that that directly relates to why gerrymandering is so toxic to democracy. We're seeing communities in Detroit and in Flint and, you know, in other parts of the country where districts are packed together and, you know, they're only given one representative who has to go out there and fight for the rights of these people who are experiencing economic and environmental like hardships. Like in Flint, their water was polluted, and yet they weren't given the equal representation that they deserve in the legislature to actually fight for reform. So gerrymandering, I think, I mean, with all voting rights issues, closely relates to, how do we solve environmental issues? I think it begins with having, an equally representative democracy. Yeah.
Thank you, Maddie. So great to have your perspective on that. Thank you so much. Does anybody else want to chime in? Give us your perspective on gerrymandering, or maybe how you've seen gerrymandering at play? Feel free to join in. I'm going to move us forward, but feel free to join in with any comments as we move forward. So Michigan is one of those states that has an independent citizens redistricting committee set up. This happens every 10 years that we take our census, and the district lines for political offices must be redrawn. I put this picture in here because it shows, if you can see District 5, just how wonky the boundary lines of that district are. And so we are currently, as a state, in the process of looking at the process of redrawing our district lines. And this is one way that we can all be a part of a really meaningful process that can enact change in our state directly. And so we're going to have Sonia walk us through kind of the timeline that they're following right now.
So yeah, this committee is supposed to be nonpartisan. Well, not like nonpartisan, and meaning like 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, and then I believe the other ones were, let's see, and then other ones that were not 5 independents, right? So 4 people who affiliate with the Democratic Party, 5 independents, and then 4 who affiliate with the Republican Party. And so again, that's for purposes of that. Hopefully gerrymandering won't happen in this process. So the 13 commissioners were randomly selected in August. There was an application process, so you could apply to be on that committee. And then they were selected in August. They were seated in September. And so now between fall of 2020 and fall of 21, they're doing public hearings, their meetings, and they're starting to draw their maps. And then the final. Okay.
The town commission.
Oh, okay. Good. Yes, in early October. So you can attend that meeting. So that's the period. This period now in the summer is where you can attend those town halls. And then the final maps will be adopted in November. And then the maps become law in December of the end of the year, December 31st. And so again, there'll be, public hearings, town halls, 10 in May, between public hearings in May and June, another 5 in like August. And then some dates to remember are like in September, after they draw their final map proposals, they'll have a 45-day period for public comments. And then that will end in the public comment period will end in early September or mid-September. And then they have to publish the rationale and their final maps. So look for those town halls, like Maddie put in there, and where those might be. And then look for, in September, you can do some public comments on the final maps that they put out, as well as they propose. So those are some dates to consider. All of this can be found on their website online. So they have the website. This is all, they have to, before every meeting, they have to do a public notice. And they have a meeting coming up on Thursday, April 22nd as well. So that's what we're going to talk about. Yeah.
as UCS sees it, the redistricting that's happening in Michigan right now is one of the most pressing issues that's facing Michigan at this time, and can enact real change as far as it goes with science policies being in place in Michigan. Maddie, do you want to give us a little heads up about the town hall coming up?
Yeah, it might not be specifically a town hall. I think it might be a public comment. I just know one of the committees I'm on, the Central Votes Steering Committee, we one of our advisors was able to secure a date in October, early October, late December, where the commission will be coming to CMU, hopefully in person. They'll be talking with students, having some sort of public event where students can go and talk to the committee, ask questions about that new process, and kind of really understand why we're doing this and kind of the significance of it. So that should be, look out for that September, October.
Yeah, I wonder if that's interchangeable, the public hearings and the town hall. I think, yeah, I'm trying to understand the difference between those two, but yeah.
Has anybody on the call had the experience of contacting your legislator directly via calls or showing up at a town hall or a coffee hour? Anybody done any of that?
I have.
What was that experience like, Eric?
Oh, that was actually me that spoke.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see it. Go ahead.
Good. Sorry, I know my video's off right now. I'll turn it on real quick. Sorry.
Max, can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah, sure. So, so I went to Congressman Tim Walberg's coffee hours one time a couple years ago. I've seen him several times since then. Well, several times in general. I don't know about since then. But for those of you that don't know, he is the lowest ranked U.S. Congressman for the state of Michigan by the League of Conservation Voters. He has voted in favor of legislation supporting the environment only on 4% of occasions that it was brought up and relevant to him in his entire tenure as congressman, which has been about 12 years as a net, I think. But he's, yeah. Anyways, he wasn't very receptive to anything. So I talked about with that at that time that we talked. I think the U.S. had just pulled out of the Paris Climate Accords. And so I'd asked about, what are you going to be doing about that? And he's like, oh, that is absolutely a horrible agreement. Look at what's happening in France right now because people were mad about the gas prices going up. I'm like, that is one country out of literally every other one in the world that has not, that is happening like that. Nothing else. Yeah. So, he wasn't very receptive, unfortunately. I think other people would be more, decent people. I'll say it. I'm not a fan of them, but I'm so glad that I went though, because I got to see what his viewpoints and opinions are, because he's also on the House Energy Committee, something like that. And, so the district that he represents butts up against Lake Erie, and that's had a lot of issues with toxic algae blooms as a result of agricultural runoff, which he blamed on the auto industry, which, although they have done a lot of heinous things to the environment, they're not to blame for that one. It's the people in his own district that are, so he's just a little afraid of accountability there. But anyways, sorry, I feel like I'm going off on a tangent. I'm not trying to. But yeah, it was a good experience, though, and I would do it again, so regardless of how he reacted. But
yeah, no, I appreciate that. And the reason why I ask is because the public comments process is pretty similar to speaking with a legislator. I mean, you go with a talking point planned about how you feel about a particular issue. I would imagine this public comment time period for the commission, I mean, a lot of it would be in writing too if you weren't physically attending a town hall. But you're probably not going to get a combative person either, because it's specifically a moment for people to give their opinion. And so hopefully it would be received well, whatever your opinion is. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. So that directly relates to how we're going to encourage you all to be in engagement in Michigan for science policies and the environment. And we've come up with 3 different ways that you can engage going forward.
Yeah, like Mary mentioned, so you can make a public comment, provide, like I said, before each meeting, there's a public notice, and that has the instructions on how to make the public comment for redistricting. So again, these meetings are now being held remotely, but you can register to attend a remote meeting yourself, and then you can you can submit a sign up to publicly speak at that meeting. So you can actually speak at the meetings as well as write a public comment and submit it by email. So that's all the instructions are in those public meeting notices on the website at their site. And then you can actually also, make comments on when you get to the maps, on the maps themselves as well. So, an interesting thing that I was thinking, when you make those, if you want to speak during those meetings, I thought it was interesting that they do provide you with sign language translation, Spanish and Arabic translation services for being able to participate in those meetings. So I thought that was cool that they're going to close caption ASL Spanish and Arabic translation services. So they give specific accommodations as well for the people to participate.
So another way that we think that would be good to know about to be engaged is if you stay up to date at michigan.gov/MICRC, you can find out the information for these various town halls and meetings and videos and a whole slew of information that they have here about the redistricting process. And so similarly, like we were doing before the election, UCS was engaged in encouraging people to have debate watch town or watch parties. And so right now we're trying to encourage people to organize watch parties around these town halls or around the redistricting issue. And so the more that you can bring in individuals in your own networks and kind of share with them about this process and encourage them to be engaged, the better, because it just gets the word out. I know that, I don't think that we mentioned this earlier, but actually environmental voters are the least likely to go to the polls out of like many of the voting profiles that are out there. And so the most that we can be engaged in the civic process in general, the better. And when we can encourage our like-minded environmental focused friends and networks to be engaged in that process, we're doing a lot of good that can be really meaningful. And then the last one is to host a town hall, which it sounds like is actually happening. So, we don't even need to tell you about that one. And that's amazing. And then Maddie, you posted something else into the chat. What was it? It passed by really quickly.
So for students, another great way to stay involved in environmental issues is to write to representatives. I know Max described a not great experience with a representative, but a lot of them are very receptive to your comments and to your, calls for advocacy. And so the Volunteer Center now has, outside of UC 106, we have little baggies with letter writing guides, so how to format a letter to your representative, as well as paper, pens, and we also included an envelope with postage on it, so you can, write your letter and send it in without having to worry about the stamp. So that's just another way to get involved, and those are now available outside of our office in the UC.
It's fantastic. Anytime that we can make the process of contacting a legislator easier, the better. I know that there's a number of apps too that, if you sign up with the League of Conservation Voters or with UCS or, with any of the activist groups, you're going to get emails or text messages where they're going to say, basically just click this link and we're going to send a message to your legislator. So anytime you get one of those links, I encourage you to click that also. But anytime that we can make it easier and reduce the barriers so that people can engage in the civic process, the better. So I think that's really great work that's being done there. So the last slide I wanted to give you all today is just our contact information. We'll take some time to do questions. If anybody has questions, or definitely if you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself or maybe something that has percolated because of the webinar, we'd love to hear that. But know that you can be in contact with us going forward. Here's our contact information. I'm trying to move the screen around so I can see everybody's face, but feel free to contact Sonia and I if you're looking for people to speak at other groups that you're a part of, or if you just want to be engaged in the work that we are doing through UCS throughout the state. We would love to hear from you. I'm going to give you one more second in case you're writing it down, and then I'm going to stop the share.
Marion, you mentioned our next call, which is next Tuesday.
Yep.
For the next.
I'm going to see if, so Sonia and I are here until 7. I'm going to look up the link for that call. It might take me a minute, but I'll make sure to put it in here so that if anybody's interested in attending that call and finding out how you can be engaged in the Consumers Energy IRP process, we would love to have you on. We're going to be hearing from Adita Sitko, who is in charge of the Midwest climate and energy campaigns, and she's always a wealth of knowledge, and I really always appreciate hearing from her perspective. So are there any questions?
I'll just add, it's not a question, but if y'all do have questions and they come up later, feel free to email me, and I can direct them to Mary and Sonia. And also, having UCS come here, it was amazing. So thank you so much for being able to come and share a little bit of knowledge about how we can get involved. For students that don't know, this is part of our Engagement is Central programming, which is all about getting people involved in civic engagement, getting them out in political advocacy, and, working to change the world through our democracy. So there will be more of these in the future. We hope to have UCS back at some point to give us more insights on how this process all works. And you feel free to, in the chat, also put the link to the rest of our Earth Week events that we're having. We have a ton of stuff going on the rest of the week. Central Sustainability is kind of leading that. So feel free to check the rest of our events out there on the Central link and as well as on our social media. So yeah, thank you so much, Mary and Sonia. If anyone has questions, feel free to just cut me off.
No, we're so happy to be involved. Sonia and I really like getting out there and seeing how passionate people are engaged in the work to create a healthier democracy. So thank you all for giving us your time. I know that Zoom fatigue is a real thing right now, and so to choose to be a part of this is very meaningful to us. I did add that registration link for our upcoming meeting next week too, if you want to be involved in that one. And with that, we will stay on if you have, go ahead, please.
So not a question. I just wanted to say, don't let my experience scare off anyone else that wants to do. Yeah, I'm so sorry. That is not what I intended to say when I was like, yeah.
It didn't sound that way. No, I think and honestly, Max, it's good to know that even if you might have a legislator who's not willing to listen, that it doesn't have to be too scary, if it's important to still go out and give our perspectives anyway. So I thank you for sharing your honest experience.
Of course, yeah. And that's, in writing, you do get friendlier responses generally because they can, at least try and be a little bit more empathetic when they're not looking at your face sometimes, which seems kind of the opposite of what it should be. But yeah, that's, but yeah, no. So for anyone else, don't let my experience scare you. I'm sorry.
No, absolutely.
No, and when you call too, sometimes you get interns or other people that you're not necessarily giving your representatives, right? But it's always they still count it, and they still check the box that says somebody called about this issue, and so they still count every time somebody calls and make sure that that you're being counted at least, and you're So even if you have a script or anything.
I do have a script when I call legislators. I write it out because I get nervous about, even talking to the interns, I get nervous. And so I like to have something to read. So
yeah,
that's
helpful.
Yeah, well, so actually for tomorrow for my club, we're doing we're doing like an activity where it's like, call a representative of Michigan and tell them to vote in favor of, there's this PFAS legislation that's coming up soon again.
Mm-hmm.
Vote in favor of that, and we have a script for them to read if they'd like, if it's comfortable. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, both Max for you attending and Maddie for you organizing this. It was a great event. Thank you.
Yeah, no, of course. You guys were great. Thank you so much. And Max, thank you for coming. I sent you an email this morning.
Yeah, no, thanks.
All right. Have a good night.
Bye, everyone.